10, 9, ignition sequence start. All engines are running.
The clock is operating. We're underway.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
And fresh out of the ISO cubes, it's time now for Kerbalcast Episode-22, Economic Boom or Economic Bust.
Judgment time.
I am your LMP, that's Lunar Module Pilot Biff Aldrin, and to the right of me, my CMP, Command Module Pilot,
Nostromo.
Coming up in today's program, we will give you our opinion of the latest update for the game.
DK is back with another edition of Modder's Minute, this week talking about atmospheric trajectories.
And Dark Mushroom has some tips on getting from one planet to another with dark matters.
We'll read your letters and update you on the Kerbal news in the mission briefing.
And this week's Shay Challenge will unleash your inner pyromaniac.
Stick around after the credits as Biff talks about not one,
not two,
but three
three
Soyuz missions, and I lay down the law with Judge Dredd.
So what do you think of our sound effect for Economic Boom?
Economic boom?
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Oh, yeah.
See?
You're not even hitting a button. It just happens.
Yeah, it just magically happens.
Wow.
See? Boom,
Nothing.
boom.
Economic, nothing. Economic boom.
There you go. See? Isn't that
Nice.
cool? Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Yeah, what we're going to do, because we've got a lot of letters today, so what we're going to kind of combine our review of the latest update, Economic Boom. There it goes.
Hey.
We're going to combine our review of that with our progress update because obviously the two are intertwined. Our review is based on our gameplay of this past week. We actually, when we did our last podcast, the update 0.25 had been out for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
But we did not want to, other than just give a couple of quick first impressions, we did not want to give a review until we had a chance to really get in there and really spend some time with it and be fair about it. I want to start with you because I am typically a science and sandbox player. You're more of a career player. I did play career this week. Because I wanted to get a feel for the new update. Yeah, but you are primarily career, so I'm going to start with you. Update 0.25. What do you think? What are your impressions?
Okay, so every time one of these a big update happens, I completely start over.
Right,
Because
and I did too.
I always want to experience it like a player who just got the thing. Because
Right.
actually around the time that these big updates happen, it goes on sale. So somebody may see it because it's on the front page of Steam or whatever and buy it and start off. So I was like, what would they experience if they said, I want to start in contract mode?
Right.
From my past experience with 0.24, 0.24 was what? Like, what do you do? Oh, you do contracts. 0.25 is why. Why do I do contracts? It's like I had more motivation in 0.24. I was doing them just to do them.
So are you saying that still to come is who, what, and when?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, if we've covered what and why.
Yeah. So, and how is something I ask almost every week.
There you go.
How do I do this?
How do I do this?
So it's really cool, and I really like it because I started off and I was like, okay, I didn't really read too much into what all of the individual things do. So I went in and I got it. I was like, well, science is always the thing I always really want to get. So I started off a science layout. Went to the administration building, hooked up with the science, perk. Because I really just see them as perks. Because it's it's a play
You're talking
style.
about the strategies.
Yeah, the
okay.
strategy. That's
Okay.
the word. So I did the strategy. Yeah, I got that science. So every time I gained funds, a percentage of the funds would be science or, reputation.
Right.
What was really cool is I was playing for a while and I was like, at the beginning, there were only a couple of them I had access to.
Right.
Like some of them I couldn't afford to start yet.
Right. Yeah,
So
you don't have enough funds or enough reputation.
I went back in and I was like, whenever I first bought it, I was like, why are there 4 slots down there? I can only pick one. There was a second one for science. So there were now 2 strategies that I could implement.
Right.
So I implemented them both. So now it's like every time, I gained funds, a percentage of it turned into science. Every time I gained reputation, a percentage of it turned into science. And another cool thing was you can adjust how severe you wanted to go into that strategy.
Right.
So if like, I only have enough money to do this to 5% degree right now. But if you're like loaded, well, it scales up with you. because a 5% increase in the beginning helps a lot, or that like 5% every time you gain, finish a contract, gain some money, anything like that helps a lot. But it wouldn't help as much whenever you're trying to buy really expensive things, or, whenever it needed to scale, because there's inflation, really.
Right.
Like you start making more money, and that 5% is still 5%, but you'd like to earn a higher percentage. So you can up that.
Right.
And I thought that was really cool. So what I like, I'm not a sandbox player, because I said there was just too much.
Yeah. And I'm primarily a science player. I said science and sandbox. Sandbox is where I experiment, but science is where I really play.
And science mode was really cool to me because it was all of the exploration with no consequence.
Right.
This 0.24 was a bunch of to me it felt like a restriction with not very much reward.
Right.
This feels like a cross between science mode and 0.24. So I have rewards, and I get to choose what they are.
Right.
So now, whenever I felt more compelled to do the contracts I normally would not have done, because part testing I really don't like doing. If it's like splashed down at or landed at, I'll do those. But whenever it's like certain altitude and certain speed, I hate those.
Right.
I really don't like doing them. But I
have a feeling that's a common opinion.
Yeah, I felt far more motivated to try them whenever I knew I was getting science guaranteed out of it. If one just gave me funds and reputation, I didn't care. If it gave me science, I cared because it gave me new parts, which could make me do more interesting things. So I would with that science strategy, I can get all that. Now, if I really started, things started getting bad and I had too many failed things, I could switch over to a strategy that gets me a lot of money and do a bunch of those little part things just to earn a whole bunch of cash. Then I could flip back to science and then, go do whatever big mission I wanted to do. So where I said before, you could get stuck where there's only you have to wait for a contract to come along that you think is worth it.
Right.
Now you can make any contract worth it in whatever way you wanted it to. So this is really kind of right up the alley that I wanted it to go.
Right.
I really like it. It kind of makes me excited for the other things they're doing. And I don't know, I had a lot of fun with just, starting off, doing all those little missions. It was kind of fun going back and doing that as a beginning player. As much as I played, I can go back and do those things really quickly now.
Yeah.
So
that's kind of the neat thing about restarting is, the first time you go through, a lot of times they seem much more difficult.
Yeah.
But then when you restart and go back through those same things, they're not difficult. They're more fun now.
Yeah. Something that like 4 different tasks that each took a mission apiece. And when you first started, you can do all 4 in one mission now.
Right.
Because you understand how to get the most bang for your buck out of your, ships and where to go and what to do. So you can really capitalize. So instead of I launched, and I got that upper atmosphere data. And okay, cool. And then I landed and I brought it back. No, I got the upper atmosphere. I got the outer space. I got, the orbit.
Yeah.
I got, this biome and this biome. And I put them all together and got it all at once in one trip, instead of each time I did a trip, I learned something new. It's each time I do a trip, I've used everything I've learned.
Yeah. It's nice to do one trip and just watch those green check marks. Just boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of me just doing parts missions and just cashing in, using the stack, or not the stack decouplers, but the ones that fasten it to the ground, the ones that hold it up.
Oh yeah, you're talking about the good Lord, now we're both doing it.
Yeah, the girder ones, whatever they're called. They're red.
You're talking about the gantries, the quick release. Good Lord, we're both going blank on this, aren't we?
Yeah,
that's horrible.
So what I'll do is if it's landed at Kerbin and it's a booster or whatever, I strap it all on there and I put that as one of the last stages to decouple.
Right.
And I just launch everything so it doesn't go anywhere and everything, all of the contracts just fire off all at once. I was like, hey, there we go. I just smack the space bar a whole bunch and parts are flying off and things are exploding. And it's okay, got all my science. So.
Well, I will say, I was, when 0.24 came out, I was fairly critical. And I am not going to be egotistical and say that Squad listened to what I said, but it's almost like they did, because the criticisms that I had of 0.24 have been answered in 0.25. My biggest gripe was I said that the new reputation and the new funding and all of those new systems to me were pointless because, like you said, it was a lot of work with no reward. And I had said that to me, they were just meaningless numbers, other than, funding, which obviously you couldn't keep going up if you didn't have the funding. No bucks, no Buck Rogers.
Yeah.
But my criticism of the previous one was I felt that there was one system in place, only half a system in place, basically. Here's the work aspect, there's no reward aspect. 0.25, now that they've added the strategies, I don't know about you, but I was constantly going back and changing and manipulating my strategies. I would get rid of one, I would add one, I would adjust the setting on one. It was much more strategic.
Yeah.
It was much more of, there was much more management involved. And all of a sudden those contracts, which I was not enjoying the last time, which seemed so pointless to me, now all of a sudden it's like, there's a point.
Uh-huh.
And okay, I'm going to do this one because I'm going to get this much reputation. And if I get that, then I can do this strategy. Or if I do this, I can get science, or I can get funding, or, all of a sudden it all makes sense. All the pieces suddenly fit together. I will say this. I also, they did some changes to some of the special effects in the game, some of the visual effects.
Uh-huh.
I love the new flame effects. I love the new explosion effects. They said that they changed some of the sound effects. I haven't noticed anything really hugely different there, but that may be because I'm marveling at what I'm seeing on the screen.
Yeah.
But they have, to me, this is a huge step forward. 0.24 was a step forward. This is like several big steps forward. I'm very pleased with this. And again, I go back to, I am so glad that there is career mode, science mode, and sandbox mode. I hope that they keep that at the very least. If they decide to do away with science, what I would like to see is in career mode, the ability to get rid of funding, because you can select your difficulty now.
Yeah.
It would be, if they get rid of science mode, which I'm not saying that they're going to or even thinking of, but if they do, make it to where career mode is customizable enough to where you can get rid of various aspects. Again, I'm a science player. I'm a sandbox player primarily, but career mode, the time that I spent with it this week, I had a lot more fun with it. There was a lot more bells and whistles and knobs to adjust, and I felt more like there was a purpose to it all.
Yeah.
So, that's from somebody who doesn't play Contract much. That was my opinion, and yours as being someone who plays Contract a lot.
Uh-huh.
So I think we both have very positive opinions.
Yeah. What's funny is if you think about all the things that they added in 0.24, they added the currencies,
right.
They added contracts, and they added like all the different contracts you do with those things,
and reputation.
Yeah, reputation. And with this one, they just gave you reasons to have all of those.
Right.
So I don't know which one was harder for them to implement into the game, but I will say that I wouldn't want to go back to 0.24 without having the things
right.
I just got in 0.25.
Well, it's funny because now in hindsight I can see it. To me, 0.24 was like half of 0.25.
Yeah,
it's like they implemented half of the system.
Yeah,
and then with 0.25 they implemented the other half.
And that's the really cool part about us having a podcast about a game that's in development.
Right.
So it's like all the time, it's like, well, there's this thing, and I wonder how it's going. Because, imagine if we did it for...
something that was finished.
Yeah, like a finished game, we'd be like, well, did you notice this feature? Well, it's always going to be there, unless they errata it or they go back and they fix it. But pretty much everything that happens is over and done. But we're watching this game develop and unfold, and it's just been really cool. And
hey, it could be worse. We could have done 10 years of a Duke Nukem Forever podcast.
Yeah.
The game that never came out.
Yeah, yeah.
Until it finally did, and then kind of sank without a ripple.
You gotta wonder how games like that would have happened now, like Too Human and Duke Nukem Forever and those. Yeah. that if they would have had things like Steam Greenlight where people would have played them while they were happening.
Right.
Right. And getting money for it,
right?
Before it actually fully came out. So,
well, that's one of the things that is nice about these in development games like Kerbal, is that Max Maps has told us that they listen to our podcast.
Yeah.
Things that we're talking about, things that people are writing in and talking about, that they're listening and they're integrating some of that into what they're doing.
Yeah.
Now obviously, probably 99% of what they hear, they're either discarding it or they're saying, that's part of what we're already planning.
Yeah.
But that there's that 1% that somebody goes, hey, there's an idea.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice to think that, that we can all kind of have little bits and pieces. Obviously we're not the ones doing the hard work.
Yeah.
And I tip my hat to the developers, especially on this one. You guys did a great job. But it's nice to think that they're very interactive with the community. The community can provide feedback, and that can kind of help shape the game over time.
Yeah.
So one thing that I did, this veers more into progress update than anything. I don't know if it was 0.25 that added this part or if it was 0.24 and I just never noticed it. But they added RCS thrusters now, not the RCS maneuver thrusters. Now you can actually, like actual rocket engines that run off RCS fuel. And I, for the very first time, built a lander that is 100% RCS. It's got the maneuver nodes on it, or I'm calling them maneuver nodes, but it's got the, it's got the four-way jets.
Okay.
But I also have the little RCS jet engines. And it makes for a very light and very small lander.
Are they just really tiny, like one?
Yeah, they're very, they're.
Do they look round?
No, they're at they're almost L-shaped. Okay. And each one of them, it has 20 thrust.
Uh-huh.
And what I did was I did the 4 symmetry, and I've got, so obviously 4 of them. I've got 80 thrust.
So does it work off the RCS controls, or does it work like
works like a regular jet engine or rocket engine.
Okay.
It works. Yeah. The RCS is a totally separate system. You still have to either go into the docking mode to use the WASD keys, or you have to use the H and the N for your RCS. But the rocket engines themselves are controlled by the rocket throttle, and you do end up with this very tiny, very very light lander.
Yeah.
And I have used that to land on the Mun and to land on Minmus, and both of them, both times, the RCS rockets were powerful enough to get me up and into an escape orbit and back to Kerbin with just the lander. So that's how small and efficient it is.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, the tank that I have on it is the 100 RCS tank. I was curious how quickly it drains that RCS tank. As far as I can tell, it's fairly comparable to what you get on a regular rocket engine. So it's kind of nice. I'm playing around, and the thing that's kind of unique now with the RCS, you don't have a center engine on the underside of your lander. I mean, you could if you didn't put landing legs on it, which I did, but if you didn't put landing legs on it, I mean, you could just set it down on the tank because it's perfectly flat.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was kind of neat.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
If you have not done an RCS lander yet, I recommend it because it solves some problems. It takes less, obviously, it takes less of a booster to get it up into orbit. And once you do get into Mun and especially Minmus, that smaller craft with the smaller thrust handles a lot better. Now, you are not going to see me take the RCS lander to Eve.
Yeah.
Okay.
We need something a little bit more punch.
Yeah. Honestly, I think the RCS lander on Eve would probably not even get off the ground.
Yeah.
But anyway, try an RCS.
Yeah, I'll have to try that out.
So we give 0.25 2 thumbs up?
Actually,
or 0.2 thumbs up?
If you didn't see it, I brought a box right here.
Yes.
You see that?
Yeah.
I brought some extra thumbs.
You brought some extra thumbs?
Yeah, don't ask where I got them. I just have some extra thumbs.
Ew, they're dripping.
Yeah. So, and amount of thumbs I won't describe up.
Yeah.
And
more than 2 thumbs up.
Don't ask where I got them.
Multiple thumbs higher.
Oh, somebody, well, a couple somebodies asked about the space plane parts. What
Right.
we thought of those. So I tried it out.
Me
and
too.
I realized the big problem with that was I didn't really know all the space plane parts to begin with.
Right.
Because I don't play Sandbox, because whenever I first started playing, I tried Sandbox, I didn't know what was going on.
Did you try one of the stock space planes?
No, I didn't, actually.
Okay, that's what I did.
Yeah, that's probably what I should have done. So I went into Sandbox mode just to make space planes.
Do you know what I call the stock space plane?
What?
The Klingon bird of prey.
Does it look like that?
Well, yeah, because it's got the
Wings forward?
the wings. Yeah, the wings sweep forward.
Oh.
Yeah, I looked at it and I went, "That's the Klingon bird of prey."
I wonder if you could ever make like curved wings and stuff too, kind of like the Corsair
Yeah.
and stuff like the.
Well, I mean, with the parts you can, or
really?
at least it looks like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, understand, I was in Sandbox at that point because I was wanting to experiment and build a space plane.
Yeah.
And I did. I built one and got it up into orbit and the whole bit. But that was several hours, by the way.
See, I just kind of put one together, and I used parts that looked new, that I didn't recognize at all, and I had gotten farther than I'd ever gotten with a space plane. I actually flew to the abandoned airfield. I did not land. I did not land properly. There's not enough left. to
Technically,
land.
you landed.
Yeah.
The plane ended up on the
It is
ground.
not in the air anymore.
Yes.
And
The textbook definition of
there's
landing.
a lot of stuff to space planes, and I need to go back and read and listen to some of the stuff we talked about in the past. But I was just like, all right, well, let's take this thing off, and I had to air intake and stuff like that, and I was like, it's not using any fuel. I said, that is awesome.
Yeah.
So, so I was like, maybe I need to play with these things some more, and actually make ones that don't look so atrocious.
What's nice about the stock plane, and this is true virtually of anything in the game, if you will load the stock version of whatever it is, and then go through and really look at it and see how the thing is put together, and go in there and look at the center of mass, go in there and look at the center of thrust, go and look at all of those things,
Yeah,
and
center lift and stuff.
yeah, center lift and the whole. Thank you, that's the word I was struggling for. When I built my first space plane in the new build, obviously, when I built it, it was using the information, the lessons that I had gleaned from the stock plane. And I was actually able to build one that got up off the ground and into space and came back down. I never tried to land it.
Yeah.
But I managed to get one off the ground, which, for me was a big accomplishment.
It was pretty fun.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Honestly, and I know I'm going to sound like a stick in the mud, my heart is in rocketry.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I like. I like rockets and I like space. And space planes to me don't quite fulfill that.
No, I get you. I don't know. I had a lot of fun with it.
Do you complete me?
No, I said I get you.
Okay.
I don't want you. I get you. No, they're kind of fun.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to play around with them in Sandbox for a while.
Right.
And whenever I feel like I'm pretty competent with them, I'll take it over into career. Because even with the ability to put on strategies, which will net me more money, I don't want to spend too much and lose too much. And the other thing is I don't want to spend all the science in those science trees to unlock things that I may not know how to use completely.
I have a feeling that if I spent more time with planes, I would probably get more out of space planes, because part of what I struggle with space planes is, getting off the ground and getting up into orbit. I'm flying in a way that I'm not used to.
Yeah.
I'm not used to something that, you have to level and the nose will go down and it'll tip on its side, and that's all stuff I'm not used to. I mean, with rockets, it's straight up and you start leaning. With this, it's like
It's like, oh, okay, yeah, adjustments here and there and stuff. So yeah, I think
loop to loop.
When I'm more familiar with the parts,
Right.
that's whenever I'll see that next level of science research and be like, oh, okay, that's that part. I need that part. But because I did science mode for so long, or I did Sandbox for a little bit, and then I did science mode and unlocked a lot of stuff through science mode, And then if I were to start fresh on contract,
Right.
I wouldn't have been comfortable buying those spaceplane parts because I wouldn't know how to use them.
Right.
And to try to spend your money, like most part tests, you could probably do in a spaceplane, probably easier, really, now that I think about it, because you have to hit a certain altitude and certain speed. But I don't know if I could look at altitude and speed and say I can make a plane that can do that. With a rocket, I can be like, it'll probably be around this fast around this time. And I don't know, it's easier to measure, because if you can't hit it coming up, maybe you can hit it coming down. So,
Yeah.
So it's like, I
Yeah.
fall at this speed. So that may work,
Well, I'm very pleased with the current update. I think this one is everything that 0.24 wasn't.
Yeah.
And I like what they've done. I like the direction the game is going. I have a couple of ideas that I want to toss out to Squad, and these are $1 million ideas, meaning I want $1 million for each one. So here we go. These are my ideas,
Oh,
and
you got a
this will make the game. Okay,
You have a list.
I have a list. I wrote these down. Okay, probes. When you send a probe to another location, the Mun, Minmus, another planet, whatever, you are taking with you the same instruments that you take on a manned mission, and you basically get the same science, but less, because you have to transmit it back. You can't bring it back, okay, unless you return the probe. All right, here's $1 million idea number one. Get out your checkbook. Make probe science different than manned science, okay? Make it to where you send a probe to a planet before you send a manned mission, and you get a different kind of science, probe science, okay? That's $1 million idea number one. $1 million idea number two, probe cameras to send remote images. Because, we do that with real probes.
Yeah.
Like Mars Lander and things. I mean, they have cameras and they send back images. It would be cool to be able to send back images. And don't make it to where I've had some games that I've played where, there'll be like a mission where it'll say, go take a photograph, and they have it written in the game code to where you have to take specifically a certain photograph from a certain angle.
Yeah.
And you spend hours wandering around.
Or worse, like you just hit the photograph button and it gives you one of 5 pre-generated photographs.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, there was one game I had where you were supposed to be like at a party and you were supposed to be taking like, secret agent pictures and whatever.
What kind of creepy video game is that?
It was a James Bond game.
Oh,
okay.
So pretty creepy.
Yeah. I think if I remember right, I think it was Nightfire, which, not a good game, but anyway, but I digress. But it got to the point where in that mission, I was literally walking around this cocktail party and I was taking pictures of everything, and I was like bumping into people and taking pictures of, the camera would be, 2 inches from their nose. And I was taking, and this was all supposed to be clandestine, and nobody at the party apparently thought any of this was unusual. There's this guy wandering around with a camera.
Just creepy old Biff walking
but
around.
just make it to where the probe, you can, if you want to generate science from this, just have it to where you can take a picture, and just like all science, once you send back a picture, pictures that follow obviously would have diminishing science returns.
Yeah.
Here's another one. Kerbalcast can collect Mun rocks. Now, if you'll notice, when you go to the Mun, there's rocks scattered everywhere. Okay, and I'm assuming that they are randomly generated. I do not expect the game engine to try and keep track of every rock. In other words, when you collect a rock, I don't expect it to actually disappear off the Mun. You just get the science. And once you get the science from one rock, then no matter how many you collect after that, it's, again, diminishing science returns.
How different would that be from
the soil sample?
Yeah.
It would be a different kind of, because soil is one thing, rock is another. And that's what I'm saying. These are different kinds of science.
Okay.
So that's 3 ideas.
Yeah, it's like a different biome.
Yeah, basically. And you could collect it from different ones, but I'm thinking in terms of things that really, we really do that. When the Apollo,
capture the real experience.
Yeah, when the Apollo missions went to the moon, they took soil samples and they took rock samples. When we send probes, we send back data, but we also send back imagery if we can. And also, let's make probes different than manned science. You can use the same measuring devices. Use your Science Junior, use your thermometer, use your mystery goo, but have it be different science if it's a probe. And that to me increases the desire to do probe missions before you do manned missions. Anyway, so that's 3 ideas. Squad, you owe me $3 million.
Yeah.
To which they say, yeah, the check's in the mail. Okay, we gave our opinion of 0.25. Our regular contributors, DK and Dark Mushroom, we asked them what their opinion of 0.25 was.
Yeah, the celebrity opinion.
Yeah, the celebrity panel. Let's start with DK. What did he say?
DK says, the building collision damage makes me curious if they are going to extend the same sort of damage to ship parts. This update mostly just made me excited for things to come.
Dark Mushroom. He says, in response to your request for opinions on 0.25, I am just as disappointed as I was with 0.24.
Oh.
On the positive side, there appears to be many performance, texture, and UI-related improvements, user interface. The game feels much more responsive, and many animations and scene transitions are smoother as a result. Funds in career mode, however, still pose a massive gameplay pitfall. Mind you, I have no problem keeping my funds, science, and reputation on the rise while I play. The system is not broken in any obvious way. My issue goes deeper than this. For me, the heart of KSP is the feeling of discovery and accomplishment, that triumphant and heroic mixture of emotions. Bold as I am, I argue that anything beyond a lack of player skill or knowledge that gets in the way of these experiences is a net loss for the game. Now that you have a frame of reference as to what I enjoy most about KSP, my gripe about career mode becomes elementary. Testing parts is never interesting, ever. I hate testing parts, and it seems these contracts come up at every turn during career mode. What I would like to see is a massive shift away from any part testing and the inclusion of way more exploratory contracts. In fact, just extrapolating on the experiences I highlighted, orbiting, rendezvous, docking, transfer, intercept, landing, and returning home, and adding missions around these maneuvers to every celestial body would be enough to never include a part test again. How's that for a rant?
Yeah, whenever I was describing the effect part testing had,
Right.
like the necessity for it, it really, the way I described it was, it's like if you were playing an RPG and there's going to a planet is kind of like a boss fight.
Right.
Or kind of like, some big quest. Part testing is kind of like whenever you're running around slaying, like killing slimes and goblins and
It's like
stuff.
killing boars in the forest for 2 points each.
Yeah, it's like you're doing these little minor things, and what it's doing is it's getting you the money or the progress or the science or whatever it be to get you to those boss fights.
And I honestly, I think that's the point of part testing. Is it's a quick and easy way to get money.
Yeah.
I think. I may be wrong.
Yeah. The only thing that about the part testing that I think just really doesn't make much sense to me is whenever I'm testing a part in a way that I'll never use it.
Yeah. Well, like the parachutes, when they have you, pop off a parachute much higher than you would ever fire one off.
But I mean,
It's like, why am I doing it at this altitude?
Yeah, the parachute doesn't explode or anything.
No, yeah,
so
it doesn't. Yeah,
you're warning that you can use a parachute there, and it's fine. Whenever it says test this engine in the water,
yeah,
it's like, well, the game doesn't let me have things that are that buoyant. When things hit the water, they usually explode.
Yeah,
so
right.
I need to build this really big thing and pile parts on top of each other above the command pod and hope nothing goes wrong. But it's like you get in this really weird spot where I understand that you have to do these little things to build up to bigger things, but some of the little things that we're doing don't make a whole lot of sense.
Well, you just gave me the definition of grind.
Yeah.
And there's not a whole lot of game players that tell you my favorite thing about a game is grinding.
Mm-hmm.
Most people say that's what I hate.
Yeah, the only reason I do it is because I won't be able to do the other things without it.
Right.
Which is weird in this game. Like, would you define the contracts, the part testing as the grind, or would you count all the trial and error as the grind?
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, to me, my experience, and this is me, my experience with part testing is trying to, it gets frustrating trying to hit, Because half the time you're at the right altitude but the wrong speed, or you're at the right speed but the wrong altitude. You spend so much time just trying to get in the right place to test the part that, you know, you end up doing things that you wouldn't normally do. Like, oh, you know, okay, now I'm going the right speed, but I'm way too high. So now all of a sudden I'm pointing the rocket straight down, which I normally wouldn't do. Yeah. Or I'm at an angle, which I wouldn't normally be at. Or I'm firing off a parachute where I normally wouldn't. Or I'm decoupling where I normally wouldn't. Yeah. You know, it's a lot of it is just kind of really odd flying. Yeah, because whenever I'd be in the vehicle assembly building, I look through all my contracts and I grab each part and I set it off to the side, you know, just like next to the command pod. I was like, okay, I need all these parts. And then I have to sort them by what altitude they're going to activate at. Right. And then if I get at a certain altitude and a certain speed, I have to make sure it's in the right part of staging. If it's not one of those ones I can right click and hit test. So yeah, it's just... Well, I had one where it was test a booster, and the way, and I was consistently having a problem with, by the time I would get to where I could fire off the booster, I was either too high or too slow. Yeah. Or too low. And so what I ended up doing was I did a capsule, a booster, a decoupler, another booster, a decoupler, another booster, a decoupler, and I basically made this huge stack. And I just, you know, I just kept firing them one right after the other, and eventually I hit the right altitude and the right speed. But again, I mean, who builds a rocket like that? Yeah, and all the boosters that you expended, did you actually gain anything? Yeah. You know? Well, I got the contract. But yeah, but did you get enough money to make up for the stuff you spent? Good question. I wasn't really... I was wondering that too, because, you know, now a percentage of what I get is taxed to give me science. Let's just say I manage my finances in the game about as well as I do in life. I was spending money like crazy, and then all of a sudden it was like, hey, how did my balance get so low? Yeah, and you set up for all these auto withdrawals, like 5% of your income for science. Like, oh yeah, it's like Netflix, or like, oh, your account's at $6, and like, oh well, I can survive. Hey, Netflix is like, hey, $8. We need $8. And now a $35 overdraft fee. Yeah. One other thing, I forgot to mention this earlier. One other thing that I do want to praise about the game. This is one of those tiny little tweaks that for some reason make all the difference to me. Ever since I've played this game, I have always wondered why there wasn't a key you could hit that took you to full thrust. Yeah. Z key. Now I hit the Z key and it takes me right to full thrust, and I hit the X key and it kills all of it. Yeah, it's a good way to get that little like spurt thrusting. Yeah. Like whenever you're like, oh, just... Well, you know, like when I'm launching straight off the ground, and let's say I'm using boosters, you know, you will throttle your engines back to take advantage of the thrust that you're getting from the boosters. Well, a lot of times when your boosters run out and you drop them, all of a sudden your speed just starts plummeting. Well, what I'll do a lot of times is, I mean, just very quickly, when the boosters die, it's like I go X and space. Not X, I'm sorry, Z and space. You know, it's like with one button I throttle up, and with the space bar I drop the boosters. And you know, that gets rid of any speed loss. But that was something that before, you know, you would drop the booster and then you'd reach over and you hit your throttle up key, and, you know, it would, obviously we're only talking a matter of seconds here, but it would slowly, compared to automatically going to full thrust, it would slowly go to full thrust from wherever you were. Yeah. Whereas now you can hit literally one key and boom, you're there. Yeah. Like so. Anyway, well, did you have any last comments before we move on? No. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and move on. We heard from Dark Mushroom, and we got his opinion of 0.25, not too positive. Our opinion, very positive. DK, I think, was positive, yes? Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought. Well, let's go ahead and move on to this week's Dark Matters. Last week, he was talking about interplanetary transfer. He is continuing to talk about that this week. How to get from one planet to the next.
Getting you where you need to go in 3 burns or less is this week's Dark Mushroom's Dark Matter. My name is Dark Mushroom, and today you and I are going to sit down and have a talk about something I wish my parents had told me growing up. A simple, no-nonsense way of intercepting planets in any orbit. Let's get started. For the purpose of simplicity, I will discuss these maneuvers entirely from the perspective of someone leaving Kerbin from a due east orbit when, in fact, this method works from just about any celestial body. Anyways, first, slap the M key and zoom out until you find your planet of choice. Right-click on it and set it as your target. Next, get in orbit around Kerbin. Now, escape Kerbin's sphere of influence. You don't want to make any massive burn at this point, just enough to get a Kerbin escape marker. If you're heading to a planet in lower orbit, it helps to burn opposite the planet's direction of travel, prograde on the sunny side of Kerbin. The opposite is true if you're heading into a planet with a higher orbit. Burn prograde on the dark side of Kerbin to get your escape. Once you've passed the SOI marker, you should now be considered by KSP to be in orbit around the Sun. You may also notice the ascending and descending nodes for your target planet have materialized around your orbit. Make a maneuver node at the next one of these that lies on your orbit. Take this maneuver and use it to match up with the orbit of your target planet. Lower planets will involve a retrograde maneuver, prograde for higher planets. In both cases, you should get a closest approach marker as soon as the orbits cross over one another. Just to recap, you've escaped Kerbin, made a maneuver at your nearest ascending or descending node, and adjusted that node prograde or retrograde to match your target planet's orbit, and now have a white closest approach marker waiting for you. Here's the step that is going to blow your mind. Make one more maneuver node, just a hair past this closest approach marker. You'll know you've done it right when the marker doesn't move or disappear. With just a little prograde or retrograde adjustment at the second and final marker, you will see your target position and closest approach squeeze closer and closer until they combine to form your encounter. Execute your burns, deleting maneuver nodes as you pass them, and you will be at your target planet in no time. This week's Dark Matter owes major thanks to Super Senior, also known as Super Senior Comic Guy on Reddit and on the KSP forums, for describing this general and useful way to get from planet to planet. Thank you! You too can send in both questions and responses to this segment by tweeting me at DarkMushroom87 on Twitter, or by emailing Kerbalpodcast@gmail.com with the subject line Dark Matter. And remember, in the inspiring words of Plato, astronomy compels the soul to look upward and leads us from this world to another.
All right, that's Dark Mushroom with this week's Dark Matters, and he's absolutely right. I wish my parents had told me that stuff.
Yeah.
All they gave me was the talk.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, give me something useful, guys.
About the space planes and the bees.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, no, the Kerbals and the bees.
Oh yeah.
No, I mean, if they'd have sat me down at an early age and said, okay, when one planet really likes another planet, this is how you get from one to the other.
You'll notice some changes in your orbit as you grow, and that's okay.
It's okay to feel that way.
Yeah.
But only if you two have a special bond. Now you don't. You don't want to transfer between just any planet.
I'm not old enough. We're stopping. We're stopping.
We're stopping. We'll have to put a mature rating on the podcast.
And that actually came in from one of our listeners.
Yeah.
Actually sent in for that one. And he has a letter too, doesn't he?
Yeah, he has a letter in our pile, and we will get to it.
No.
I will say
we can't play favorites.
We can't play favorites. Well,
throw it as well.
I have no idea where it is.
You know what? Play favorites.
We've randomized the pile.
Oh, it's too late. Well, you get the letter.
Well, we are going to move on now to Mission Briefing, and this is where we talk about Kerbal news, and we also read your letters. And we have a couple of categories of letters this time. Last time around, Nos had a question.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, what was your question?
If you had two fuel tanks with the same amount of fuel, and you put different engines on them with different thrust limits, which one's going to go farther, or will they go the same distance at the just at different speeds?
Well, let's just say we got some responses.
Yeah, and then we got some responses about, hey, it's the mic hit. That's been a while.
I know, we haven't done a mic hit in a while.
And then we had the 0.25 response.
Yeah, we sent out on Twitter and also by email. We said, we want to hear your opinions. We bloviated our opinions. We want to hear yours about 0.25, and we got some responses there.
So let's start off with one of the responses to 0.25. This one comes from Kyle K. Hi, I've played Economic Boom for a while now, and I've noticed that they took
You forgot it was going to do that, didn't you?
Yeah, it just kind of sprung up on me. That they took away the old wings, and the new wings are smaller than the old ones. Also, the destructible buildings have been really fun. You know what's funny? We talked about the changes in 0.25.
Right.
I haven't blown up a building yet.
Well, that's because it costs a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't even done it in Sandbox. It's weird because I was so focused on like playing around with the strategies.
Can you do it in Soapbox?
Soapbox.
Yeah, I'm on my soapbox.
About to preach.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I feel the power of Kerbal.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's a career only.
How?
Ooh, that would be. You know what?
Okay. So have you blown up a building yet?
No.
Okay. I want to find. Like, I wonder.
I almost did.
How?
I was deorbiting.
Yeah.
And because I always try. I always try and land as close as I can to the space center.
Yeah, it makes it easy on the recovery guys.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. You know, you don't want to work them too hard.
Oh yeah.
But I was coming in. I was deorbiting. And I was in this like perfect line right into the VAB, vehicle assembly building. And I was just do. And then all of a sudden I went, I can destroy these things now. And I was like, ah! But fortunately, as you come down, your arc tightens.
Yeah.
And so it actually moved away. But for a while there, I was in a direct path right to the center of the space center.
Yeah.
And I mean, I could have wiped out half of the thing.
So is it? I don't know. Okay, so neither of us have done it, so I'm going to try it, before the next episode. But I wonder.
You're going to have negative funding when you get done.
I wonder if there's levels of destruction. Like if you just like a probe core just lands on it from orbit. Like, the worst thing they could add to the game at this point? What?
Insurance.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? Like if you take out half the space center, your insurance policies go up. And then like this little green insurance salesman shows up.
Yeah, but I wonder like if they have levels, the building is either destroyed or not destroyed, or if it has levels of being destroyed.
I don't know.
Or how little it would take to destroy a building. Like what's like the smallest thing you could throw at a building and cause it to be destroyed, like weight-wise. Okay, are you ready for a shameless plug for later in the program? It's interesting that you say that. Once you hear the Shea Challenge this week. Oh.
There you go.
Suspense.
There you go. I've billboarded.
I did
some
yet,
billboarding.
So.
Well, let's move on. Our next letter comes from Jim3535, and he says, Bifnos, one word, Bifnos. First, I would say that one thing I've really, really wanted to see is screenshots of your exploits. When you talk about your progress and stranding of Kerbals in various places, it would be awesome to see what your ships look like. That's something I never even thought about.
Yeah.
But we'll start doing that. We'll start tweeting out screenshots.
I did, I almost completely live tweeted my whole Rolly experience. So, yeah, I mean, I can start doing that.
Do you know that since we're Steam pals, that I can go in and look at your screenshots?
Yeah,
and you can look at mine?
Yeah, have you seen some of mine?
Yeah, well, they're all Rollies.
Yeah, they're all Rollies.
Mine are like, here's a ship plummeting into Jewel. Here's a ship plummeting into Duna.
I'll screen cap.
Here's a ship stranded on Eve.
I'll screen cap game glitches. So I don't send them to anybody. I just think they're funny, so I save them. So if you ever see weird pictures of me like halfway through a building or something, it's like, oh.
Have you noticed they rescaled some parts in the new game? I have a screenshot of this. There are now parts that when you connect them, there is a visible gap between the parts.
Oh, really?
And I actually launched a rocket that was like, it was like the engine, a blank space, the fuel tank, a blank space, the decoupler, and a capsule. It was like I launched this Dr. Seuss craft or something, because it was all in different pieces.
It's like Rayman.
Yeah.
He's got hands.
Yeah.
He's got a torso, but there's nothing in between.
Yeah, exactly.
I experienced something I hadn't done in a while.
Jim, we're going to get to you later here in a minute.
I was on re-entry, and I had 4 Separatrons on my command pod.
Right.
And I was at ×4 time warp, and you can still control the thing at ×4.
Right.
And so I would hold Q and get the thing to spin, and like the Separatrons would separate from the thing, and they were still attached. So you just have these like Separatron halo orbiting it, and then you'd stop and they'd reattach. It's just something fun to do.
Like the craziest playground game ever.
Yeah.
Okay. We continue now with our letter from Jim3535.
Oh wait, one more thing.
What?
I'm just kidding. Keep going.
You bad. Okay, Jim, there are many times, he says he wants to see our screenshots. There are many times when I'm listening to the podcast and I'm dying to see what your ships look like. I sent him an email with some screen caps or screenshots in it.
Yeah.
And we'll start trying to be more conscientious about tweeting out some screenshot pictures. One picture that I want to tweet out, I was talking about the RCS lander. I want to tweet out a picture of that.
Yeah, I want to see a picture of that.
Yeah, because you would be amazed at how small it is.
Yeah.
And it's very effective. So anyway, I will definitely tweet out a picture of the RCS lander.
Have you tried...
Can I read this letter?
Sorry, keep going.
No, go ahead. What?
Have you tried just like not even putting a command pod on it and just putting a chair?
No, I have not tried that.
Okay.
Why would I try that?
Because it's funny.
Uh-huh. Humor is a relative concept.
Yeah.
Okay, back to Jim 3535. I have been enjoying the 0.25 update. The strategies add a nice aspect to the game. My favorite thus far is trading some funds for science. This allows me to unlock stuff on the tech tree without the grindiness, there's our word,
Yeah.
of collecting all the science with measurements. There are people who have complained that it's too powerful a strategy, but I don't agree with that. If you know what you're doing, you can unlock the tree quickly, but that is a legitimate option. Players looking for more challenge can change the difficulty options. That's another thing we didn't talk about, but I like being able to scale the difficulty.
Yeah, I haven't done it yet, but I like it being there. I like you can also change your starting funds.
Yeah. I like that. I mean, this game gets more polished, and I like that there's just so many little options you can get in there now and tweak. And I mean, you can literally make it to where the game that I'm playing is not the game that you're playing.
Yeah.
You know?
It's actually funny because somebody, he just mentioned that some people are like, well, that makes it too much like this. It's like, well, yeah, but you chose to, so that means you wanted it that way.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
yeah, it's
like don't complain about the buffet choices when you're the one who made them. So.
Yeah.
Okay, Jim 3535. It's still pretty easy to exploit contracts that repeat to farm rewards. Some contracts keep getting generated and are okay with less than practical results. For instance, recovering or transmitting science from around Kerbin. This can be completed by transmitting a crew report for 0 science. The result is that a player can farm an arbitrary amount of contracts without incurring additional costs. Here's something that I have noticed myself. 64-bit KSP is even more unstable on Windows than on 0.24, so it's really best if users avoid it. Ferrum has a very interesting post where he talked about how KSP could be induced to be very unstable just by a load modding textures and no code to push the memory usage past 4 gigabytes. Because you guys like sign-offs, I'll quote one from Neil deGrasse Tyson, which he's one of my idols. Keep looking up. That letter from Jim 3535, and surprisingly, we actually got through it. I'm going to interrupt your letter now.
I got more to say.
I bet you do.
It's short, so you got to capitalize.
I have to quickly interrupt.
Yeah. From Acronymus regarding the new strategy system. I personally think that it is a nice opportunity to speed the things up a bit if it is used carefully. If you overdo things, you may get to a point of no return where you don't make any money and thus lose your ability to progress or play the campaign at all.
That's the one thing about funds that I don't like is, I like the freedom to basically build what I want to build and launch what I want to launch and having to kind of keep an eye on that funding bar.
But
I know some people love that.
I haven't hit the point to where I just don't have the money to do what I want unless I've tried the same thing multiple times without reverting. Mm-hmm. Then I can run out of money.
You're just not playing it like I am.
Yeah.
Hey, it takes a skilled hand to run out of funds. And that skilled hand is mine.
You're playing like Brewster's Millions.
With like throwing away money like crazy.
You gotta spend all this money, otherwise you won't get the money.
Yeah. I'm going to spend 400 funds to get the 10 funds contract.
Yeah.
Okay, next letter from Tony D. Hi, guys. Listen to some more of the last episode. Just a quick comment. Biff has spoken at length of his adventures, I would say misadventures, of his adventures on Eve. In the last episode, you quickly talk about how hard it is to leave Eve. Nos talked a little bit about ScanSat. Put those two together. If you land on Eve at a high elevation, which you can determine using ScanSat, It is much easier to take off from Eve. I have never thought of that. I've heard that there are some people that claim that the elevation doesn't make any difference, and then there's some people that swear by it.
Well, you're higher up, so that's less time that you're in the atmosphere.
Theoretically, yes.
So, it's like,
but you know, the thing is, Eve,
yeah,
Eve just, honestly, Eve sits around and thinks away.
Yeah.
It's like, I want that spaceship.
Oh, that's a pretty looking spaceship. I want it. I wants is it. It's my precious.
Our next letter comes from Chris.
Why did you interrupt me?
Wait,
I was doing a funny voice.
Hi, Biff and Nos.
Hello.
Thanks for answering my question about your gameplay with the new .25. I usually start a fresh game with a major release whenever, those happen as well.
Yeah.
Just wanted to say thanks for the podcast. I'm like Cody and listen while I drive around during my job, but don't worry. Never crashed, and I'm parked. Engine off while I'm typing. Well, hey, according to Cody C, fly safe. So he's flying safe.
Fly safe.
Drive safe. Be safe.
Be safe.
Safe. I recently found the site www.kerbalx.com. He said, and he just wants us to know that he's not affiliated with it.
Yeah. You remember we talked about that a
a
couple episodes back.
He says it's a nice repository of craft. Before I mainly searched for the Kerbal forums to try to find these things.
Right.
I wondered if you or your listeners ever share your craft files and if there were any good repositories that you had in mind. I enjoy building my own craft, but I usually learn by example. I like to see how other builders use their parts and arrange them not only for looks, but for function. Kerbal X is still early, but it has a nice selections of crafts and sub-assemblies. I hope it catches on and grows. Sign off, you can never have enough Delta V, from Chris.
That's true. I would like to get to a point where we could maybe send out some craft files or something. Yeah. Some of the ships that we're building. At least to give people a good laugh. Like, wait a minute. This is how you built the
thing? It's
thing?
like whenever he asks for those screenshots, I'm like, I'm about to get scrutinized. So this is going to be ugly. I'm going to put up some stuff, and they're like, why is there RCS on the top of the command pod? That doesn't...
Well, honestly, the people that do streaming on Twitch TV, honestly, they've got to have fairly thick hides. Because you'll be watching, like, people will be building, and the comments will be, like, well, why are you doing that? Wrong!
Yeah.
No, you're dumb! They don't say that. They say, respectfully, you're incorrect.
Yeah.
Okay. Next letter. This is from Renz L. Dear Nos and Biff.
Hey, my moment in the sun.
Dear Nos and Biff.
Hey, I'm first.
Yeah, you're first.
Finally, been working my way up.
Yep, you're my McCartney to you're the McCartney to my Lennon. Yeah, I wish.
I'm a Ringo, really.
Yeah. Oh, I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah.
Greetings from the Netherlands. Thank God he didn't say nether regions. I hope I'm not your only listener in this corner of the world because I think your podcast is worth a large audience. Keep up the good work. Yay! He probably is the only listener in that. Anyway, never mind.
No, actually, it's like our first episode 1 or 2.
Mm-hmm.
The second highest number of downloads is from the Netherlands.
Yeah. Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't mention this, but we did kind of pass a milestone this past week. The Nigerian royal family is apparently listening to us.
Oh.
Because they've been sending me special business offers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Nice investment. All they want is my social security number. So
that's
it's really
not much.
nice. Really nice of them.
Yeah.
Nice folks. The Nigerian royal family.
That's just a couple digits
Good
on your way
folks.
to millions.
Good folks. Yeah. I've been playing KSP since 0.17, and I have no idea how many hours I've racked up so far. It's probably a ridiculously high number. Luckily, my wife is a very understanding person,
That's
and
good.
my 5-year-old son is an aspiring astronaut, but I digress. And I wrote him back in an email, but I'll say it here. For his 5-year-old son, I hope to someday hear about your exploits on the moon or on Mars.
Yeah.
So good. We're proud of you, and keep up your studies and be an astronaut. For me, the best feature of Economic Boom are the difficulty settings. I always wanted to play Iron Man style, but F5 and F9 are just too seductive when one of my Kerbals is in danger. Now I've just turned them off, and I'm having much more fun designing emergency abort systems for all my craft. Don't know how you guys use it, but my strategies in the admin building are all geared to boosting my science gain. That's me. I go for science.
Yeah, I'm doing science right now. If
Yeah.
I ever have needs in other areas, I may switch to that. But right now, I'm just trying to get as many parts unlocked as I can.
Nos has needs. Looking forward to another episode filled with Kerbal bits and off-topic bites. And I love this sign-off. You ready? Come home with your rocket or on it. Little 300 there.
Yeah.
Spartans! Yeah, come home with your shield or
Tonight
on
we
it.
dine in Minmus.
I'm Scottish and a Spartan. Or something. What, do I? No, yeah, that's, you're the next one.
Okay. From Super Senior. Hi, guys.
There you go. That was the guy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was the one that, from Dark Mushroom, from Dark Matters.
The Super Senior Encore. Hi, guys. I love the podcast introducing the newer After the Credits segment. I think it's good to be open to change so that you can keep improving. In his segment, Dark Mushroom called for handy ways to get to the inner planets. In my experience, trying to eyeball transfer angles results in fairly poor encounters and plane changes which waste a ton of fuel. Well, I've got a method to share that I call the double orbit method. Step 1. Leave your starting planet's sphere of influence. If you're going to an inner planet, leave retrograde relative to your starting planet. If going to an outer planet, leave prograde relative to your starting planet. Step 2. Open map view. Set your destination planet as your target and create a maneuver node as close to the next ascending or descending node as possible. If you're on the same orbital plane, the position doesn't matter. Step 3. Increase the maneuver node's prograde and retrograde vectors until it crosses your target's orbit. Step 4.
Step 4.
Create a second maneuver node slightly after the intercept marker. Step 5. Increase the maneuver node's prograde vector until you get an encounter. Step 6. Follow the maneuvered nodes and enjoy your easy encounter. This method works whether you are heading for an inner and outer planet or moon, and whether the planet is on the same orbital plane or not. It's only slightly less fuel efficient as looking up launch windows, but it saves you the burns that put you into the same orbital plane, so in some cases it might actually put you ahead. I'm looking at you, Even Gilly. I've used it on missions to and from every planet and moon, and I've never come back away feeling like I'm wasting any fuel. Thanks again from Super Senior.
Our next letter. Dear Kerbalcast, rookie caster Canary's Blackfriar reporting for duty. Yes, sir. I have only known about your podcast for about 2 weeks, and over said weeks have binged most of your episodes, and might I say, I've been loving every minute of it. Well, thank you. Cool name, Canary's Blackfriar. Point 25. This update brings both some much-needed development to career mode in the form of the admin building and its strategies. It also introduces for the first time our new aircraft parts pulled directly from the mod Spaceplane Plus. I am a great fan of the change, as those parts have needed an update for a long time coming. However, I'm far more excited by what this move represents for the KSP community. Squad is more than willing to endorse and support fan-made content. Downsides. Landing on the VAB just spiked in difficulty for me, so I must be weary. Although this update improved both career mode and new SP parts, Spaceplane parts, and let's be honest here, there's only one thing we're interested in, blowing the KSC to smithereens. However, despite my normal attitude of pyromania, I'm not too keen on this feature. This is because it likely foreshadows further developments in point 26, manifesting in the form of other buildings on Kerbin, from cities to factories. This makes me a sad clown on the inside.
Aww.
Because I would have preferred less aesthetical features, such as the promised multiplayer or a stable 64-bit version. But that's why I don't work at Squad and the devs do. Anyway, that's it from me. Canary's Blackfriar signing off. The hype will last forever. Did you like my dramatic rendition of his sign-off?
Okay, this one comes from, it's an acronym TAPOR, which I'm going to guess is Totally Awesome Person's Organized Report.
That was a good guess.
Good guess.
Completely wrong, but it was a good guess.
Oh, what is it? Oh, The Awesome Power of Rockets. Either one's good. He's an awesome guy.
You know what? Squad should have used that sound effect. You know how they replace the sound effects?
I'm still waiting for the mod.
Hey, Squad, for another $1 million, you can have this one.
I'm still waiting for the mod that replaces RCS with fart sounds. You would have a whole fart lander. Because monopropellant is methane to me, and it runs off farts.
That idea stinks.
Okay, so from TAPOR, Greetings, gentlemen. First off, I've been listening since episode 2 and enjoying the ride. I've been playing KSP about as long as Nos, but have clocked near as many hours as Biff.
Wow.
This game has made me stay up well into the early hours a couple of times without even noticing time had passed.
I feel like a rank amateur now.
Time warping will do that, though. Not sure how that happened, as I've got a family, full-time job, and studying. Nothing cool, but I can now depreciate assets with as much skill as landing on an engine bell on Minmus. Actually, I'm better at landing on Minmus.
Yeah. Take a guess which skill will be more useful.
I really like how the show is evolving, and I'm getting a whole swag full of dad jokes from Biff.
There you go.
Was it the egg humor?
Yeah, I think exactly.
Oh,
I got you. I got you with another egg joke.
I'm in the pro camp for Digress and don't feel that it needs to be placed after the credits. The space history stuff is probably my favorite. Just gave myself away as a proper English speaker since...
the way he spelled favorite.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. With
it has a U in it.
O-U.
Yeah, O-U.
Favorite. But enjoy the movies, too. Gravity, Europa Report, and Prometheus irritated me to no end. Aww. But since good sci-fi is hard to come by, well, they get a rewatch when I have the house to myself. Well, hey, let me know what you like. What do you consider good sci-fi?
Yeah.
So.
And you know what? How much you want to bet it's Blade Runner? It's Blade Runner. In your face. Blade Runner.
I never said it was bad.
I know. You just said that it was the wrong.
Yeah. I was born too late for Blade
You were
Runner.
born too late for Blade Runner.
I tend to name my craft after granddaddy songs. Their repertoire seems to be made for KSP. I wouldn't be surprised if Squad used He's Simple, He's Dumb, He's the Pilot as inspiration for the Kurd stupidity skills.
Okay, you ready for another plug? Here's a billboard.
What's that?
Stay tuned to the very end of today's program, and you will hear a very short, very edited version of that 9-minute song.
You know?
You have to stay all the way to the end of after the credits.
You know, it's only coming up in like 30, 45 minutes, somewhere probably less than that, and I'm excited.
Yeah.
Like, we're building hype.
Now, whatever you do, though, do not fast forward to the end. You have to listen, because I guarantee everything from this point on is gold. You don't want to miss it.
Who would skip me? I'm adorable. Sign off is Bring the Snacks.
I've always thought that.
Don't forget the shoots and beware the Kraken. Coming
Beware
from
the Kraken.
The awesome power of rockets. Or totally awesome person, organized report.
Or as I always say, beware the butt cracking. Oh. Well, hey, you're the one that does the fart RCS.
Yeah, if only someone else would do it and make that mod. It's going to be hilarious.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I don't even want credit for it. I just want it to be there.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on. Next letter. Jamie T. Dear Biff and Nos. I was really excited for this update, and I am having fun with the different strategies. I grew up playing games like Transport Tycoon and Theme Hospital, and adding elements of those to what was already a fun space game is just too awesome. Keep boldly going. Cool. Jamie T., thank you.
From Alex in Tokyo. Hi, guys. Thought I'd dash off a quick answer to your question about fuel efficiency from episode 21. If you take 2 fuel tanks and give one an engine twice as powerful as the other, will they end up going the same distance? Short answer, it depends. A longer answer is, it depends on this engine's specific impulse. The higher the ISP, the more efficient the engine. Your question really relates to delta V. If your 2 engines have the same ISP, they will have the same delta V regardless of their thrust rating. In this case, they will both go the same distance. Actually, the mass of the engine also matters too, so don't forget that.
Mm-hmm.
In KSP, the engines designed for vacuum flight generally have an ISP of around 350 to 390. The best ISP in the game is the ion engines, and that's in the 4200s. And the best engine for a liftoff is the LVN nuclear engine with the 800s. May you always have fuel, power, and snacks. From Alex in Tokyo.
I am going to be looking at ISPN. Yeah, I'm going to be looking at ISPN. Yeah. It's the non-sports channel. I'm going to be looking at ISP values now.
Yeah.
Something I've never thought to do, or never even knew to do that.
Yeah, like, I don't know. I've looked up some terms before to see what they mean, but there's, like, you right-click on a part, and there's a lot of info there in the VAB, and so you'll see a lot of information, and, you know, I take the things that sound like they're what I want and go for them, because by the time I'm looking up all the terms, and, you know, I may forget some.
Oh, those numbers look good.
So it's like, as the problem shows up, and as, you know, the viewers, or as the listeners suggest things.
Thank God they're not viewers.
Yeah, we wouldn't have them.
Well, no, they would gouge their eyes out the minute the camera swung in my direction.
Yeah, then they're back to listening.
No, it's the butt cracking.
But as they've like answered these things, that's a new piece of information to me to reference. So
Right.
where I would normally use this one engine, I'll now use a different one because
Right.
it has different values.
I am so glad that I suppressed my initial instinct last time. When you first asked this question,
Yeah.
for an instant, I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to try and just bluff my way through this answer. I'm just going to let loose with a blizzard of jargon
What could go wrong?
and just sound like the most intelligent guy on the planet.
Yeah.
And then I went,
You would have sold.
no, because then we would be reading about 400 letters
Yeah.
of people explaining how wrong I was.
I would have bought the snake oil for
Yeah.
at least a week.
Yeah. Until the letters started coming in. Then you lied to me.
I trusted you.
Biff. Let's see. Next letter comes from, I love this, Peter Kerman from South Africa. He has adapted the name of the game. Hello, Biff and Nos. What we have here in Economic Boom is a new way. I wonder, is that ever going to get old? I'm liking it.
It's not old to us.
It's not old to us.
We may hear next week about how it was old.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. If you haven't heard it before, it's new to you. What we have here in Economic Boom, okay, maybe it is getting old, is a new way to push the player to the next level and challenge them. I love the new admin building. The new strategies adds a bit more depth to the game. I have not tried the space plane mod, as I believe space planes are too futuristic and spoil the reality of exploring space with current technology. It's still a bit early to say more, but I believe the developers should update their tutorials with the new update, as this in-depth stuff may confuse and chase away new players. Keep up the good work, gents. Peter Kerman from South Africa.
This one is from Phil, also known as Run Phil Run. Hi guys, the aerodynamics model really does need to be improved.
Wow. Okay, so that's a callback to an earlier podcast. Yeah.
While completely realistic aerodynamic effects do add a challenge, the game feels incomplete without it. In my opinion, one of the reasons why installing far or near makes the game so much more difficult is because playing with the simplified model got us into really bad habits, like not putting fins on the ascent stage or leaving nose cones out entirely. My hope is that Squad will implement difficulty settings so when you play you could choose how difficult you wanted it to be. I think it would be great to extend that idea to other mods like Deadly Reentry and Life Support, including them as difficulty settings instead of standards. As a listener since episode 4, I think that with all the changes to Kerbalcast are moving in the right direction. Hashtag yes digress, as long as you change a few things. Hashtag the changes you made are great, and hashtag is this how hashtags work? Every episode is better than the last. Keep it up. I have some exciting personal news as well.
Yeah, this is great.
I found out this week that my great-grandfather worked on the lunar module during the Apollo program, and starting in January, I'll be a structures engineering intern at SpaceX. I'll be sure to write in once I start working there. It seems to be pretty similar to KSP. Fly safe from Runville Run.
You know, if he can smuggle me onto one of the spacecraft,
I'll be first to send
let
you
me
on
be
one.
a stowaway,
Oh, yeah.
I would be eternally in his debt.
I'll be first to help you on board.
Yeah, you would. Now, congratulations, Run Phil Run.
Yeah, that is awesome.
That is a
pieces of
cool internship to get. SpaceX.
Oh, yeah. And the lunar module thing is really cool too.
I asked him about that. He says that he was, because I was curious if he worked for Grumman. I put a D on there, Grumman or NASA, and he worked for Grumman. So anyway, that's cool to have worked on the LEM. Did you have you watched From the Earth to the Moon yet?
No, I haven't started yet.
Yes? Okay.
I haven't started yet.
Okay. When you get to episode 5, it's all about building that LEM. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's cool. I'm telling you.
I trust you.
Okay.
I'll get to it.
All right. Next letter. Okay, here we go. Greg V. Last update you mentioned that reputation had no value. I feel that this update really changed that. While it did not do much for gameplay updates, it made the background simulator aspects work much better, and obviously, while this isn't the biggest update ever, it will allow a much greater immersion into the gameplay than previous updates.
From MK3424, I find the update a blast, pun intended, and innovative as always. I wonder, could there ever be more than just one launch pad? You know, if they ever bring in multiplayer, I could really see a second launch pad existing, unless they built a whole new compound that was like farther down the shore or on a different continent.
I'm glad you said that, because I did not think of multiplayer, but when he said more than one launch pad, my immediate thought was, how would you control two separate ships?
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, if you're doing multiplayer, I could see that.
Or I could
definitely
see another launch pad, like if you destroyed that one, you could use your backup,
You wouldn't have any money.
Yeah.
Yeah, you destroyed the other one.
Yeah, you could use your backup until you had the money to fix the other one. But when multiplayer, I don't know, because you could put them right next to each other.
Right.
You could launch, right next to each other. Or you could have like a space race thing where on another continent, there's somebody else has their own thing and they could launch stuff.
I just had another $1 million idea.
What?
Squad, get your checkbook out. Kerbal Cold War. I want my money.
I don't want to experience that.
I want my money.
I don't want to experience that at all.
No, that would be cool. Imagine, especially like in multiplayer, like you could be one country and I could be the other country.
Yeah.
And I could be...
And we could go for years spreading paranoia on each other.
Yeah, that's right. And we could all live in fear.
No, that's not... You know what? Let's do that.
Yeah, let's do that. One thing I learned from the Cold War, if a nuke ever does go off, just lay on the ground and put your hand over your head and you will be safe.
Oh.
Duck and cover.
Yeah,
I'm telling you. Okay, next letter. Cajun Nerd. Hey, guys. I wanted to respond to your question about engine efficiency Nos asked in episode 21. If you hover over an engine in the VAB and then right-click for more info, you'll see a stat called ISP. This stands for specific impulse. You can think of it as the efficiency, or miles per gallon if you prefer, of the engine. The higher the number, the more efficient the engine. You'll also notice that there are two ISP ratings, one for in atmosphere and one for in a vacuum. So there you go. For things like lunar or planetary transfers, or even just flying around in orbit around Kerbin, an engine with a higher ISP is going to get you better fuel economy and thus more delta V than an engine with a lower ISP. May your fuel tanks stay full and your engines be as efficient as a Honda Civic. He must really like Honda Civics.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the next one?
This one comes from Braden51. Hi there, Biff and Nos. Oh, I'm second again.
You're second.
It was a good while last.
You were first a couple back.
Yeah. Congrats on the podcast. I'm a big fan of everything, including, but I digress. Well, we're a fan of you.
That's right. Dadgummit.
I started playing KSP back in January 2014. I don't play through Steam, so I don't know how many hours I've logged, and it's probably for the best. I don't know that. Using stock craft and no mods, I've made it to the Mun, Minimus, Duna, Ike, and back. I've made it to Eve, but never returned from landing on it. Since version 0.3,
that's a common experience.
I've been using numerous mods, including Kerbal Alarm Clock, MechJeb, KW Rocketry, and B9 Aerospace. I prefer the fine-tuned controls afforded by MechJeb to eyeballing the navball. My latest project has been to document my launches. I started with simple screenshots and narratives.
Yeah, most of those mods DK has covered in Modder's Minute.
Yeah.
Cool. Shout out to DK.
Thanks for taking the time to read this email. And as I said, I'm a big fan of everything you guys are doing with the show, and I look forward to the days and weeks to come. Keep up the good work. Your pal in space, Braden51.
All right. Well, thank you. Frequent contributor North Star writes in, Dear Kerbalcast team, a great program as always, and I'm currently partway through listening to it. However, I just wanted to write in quickly to answer the question in the first 10 minutes or so Nos had about why he wasn't getting as far with his engines. The really quick and dirty answer is that he wasn't getting as far with the larger engines for the same fuel.
Because he's dumb.
How did you know? How did you know he wrote that?
As far as like Kerbal goers go, I'm the person that had the check engine light on until the car died. And I was like, I don't know what's happening. Why isn't it working? It doesn't have the go on it.
You missed the next part. He says Andy smells funny too.
Oh, that's a given.
Yeah. See, North Star just, he's got the zingers.
Yeah.
Let's see. You were okay. Blah, blah, blah. Larger engine, same fuel. This had nothing to do with the relative thrust levels, except that higher thrust meant he could actually get to orbit quicker and lose less energy to gravity, and everything to do with the specific impulse of the engines and his craft's fuel fraction. Without going into a long explanation, the specific impulse of an engine is how much bang for your buck you get from your fuel. I love the various explanations we've gotten of ISP.
Yeah.
Miles per gallon, bang for your buck.
Uh-huh.
The higher the rating, the further an engine can take you on the same fuel supply. all other things, thrust, fuel fraction, etc., being equal. The large Rokomax radial engines with thrust 160 have terrible specific impulse, even lower than that of the small radial engines, and as such won't get you very far for the same fuel. The other thing limiting his lander's performance was its fuel fraction. Basically, the more the craft is things like engines and crew capsules, and the less it is fuel, the less distance its fuel will be able to carry it. Because the large radial engines are quite heavy, they weighed down his lander and prevented it from getting very far. When it comes to engines, a useful factor to look at in minimizing this sort of situation is the thrust-to-weight ratio of an engine. That is how much thrust it produces for its mass. It also helps if you don't use engines any more powerful than you need to, since more powerful engines tend to weigh more than less powerful ones. Right tool for the right job. He didn't say that, but I did. Thank you very much. Good to hear from you again, North Star. And Nos has our next letter.
From Orbitus2. I haven't gotten much of a chance to play with .25, but I have enjoyed the update so far. Destroying the Space Center is one of the most hilarious features I've seen in the game. The new Spaceplane Plus parts are also very nice. Stock cargo bays will be very, very fun to use. I'm not a big fan of the new Mark 1 parts, the 1.25 meter circular plane parts, especially when there's a stock part revamp mod that Vin is doing such a great job on. His remade LVT series engines look incredible. Still, it's nice that the developers are trying to improve the old parts, even if it's just small improvements.
We have a news item here. When .25 economic boom came out, quite a few articles were written in various game publications and websites and whatever. This is one that came from the website Rock, Paper, Shotgun, and it's called Interns and Explosions, Kerbal Space Program's latest. Quote, "You might think yourself a real Top Gun, the next Dan Dare, or a veritable Buck Rogers. Kerbal Space Program has been out long enough for you, oh mighty pilot, to master spaceflight and possibly get a bit cocky. Don't worry, the latest update has added new things to mess up. Your space center is destructible now, for starters. It also bulks out the career mode a little with new strategies that might help you, but can backfire, like unpaid interns. Administration are behind those bad ideas, of course. The new administration facility building in career mode lets you pick 3 strategies that burn one resource for another. Aggressive negotiations eat reputation but save cash. Open sourcing your tech will boost your reputation but lower earnings, while unpaid research interns can get you extra science at the cost of your reputation, and they'll eat all your pizza." They didn't say that part. "You cannot sadly send interns into space, though you may want to."
Yeah.
They didn't say that part either. "If you, in an act of rebellion and impressive role-playing, want to take down those stuffed shirts in administration, you can. Every building in the Space Center is destructible now, so you could accidentally drop your boosters in just the right spot to take them down. Take that, the man." That's from the website Rock, Paper, Shotgun.
From Jacob O. Hi, Nos and Biff.
Hello.
That's right, I wrote it backwards. Hashtag bad bass coming through. Maybe,
I'm all about that bass. That bass.
or maybe it's bad bass. Like Big Mouth Billy Bass. Remember those?
I like bad bass.
The man on the wall would turn sideways.
Because, I'm not all about the bass.
Yeah.
I'm all about the bass.
If you went fishing, it would be.
I'm all about that bass. About that bass. Go ahead.
So you asked about my thoughts on KSP .25. Overall, I think this update is awesome. In my opinion, the ability to change difficulty and use strategies is mandatory for KSP to be a functional game for anyone. I have always enjoyed playing, but I could never think of anything to do. Science mode was too hard and didn't offer a true reward for doing anything. Those problems were solved by last update with contracts and funds. Contracts giving me ideas for things to do, and funds offering rewards for them. Basically, .23.5 turned KSP from a simulator to a game, and .24 turned KSP from a game to a fun game that anyone can pick up. Happy Kerbling, Jacob.
Cool. Our next letter comes from All-Star Gamer. How far you can go with the 2 different engines has nothing to do with the thrust, unless you're actively fighting gravity, i.e. not in orbit. How far you go is based on how much fuel you have and the ISP of the engine. You will need to right-click on the engine in the VAB or the spaceplane hangar, and it will give you the ISP rating in vacuum and in atmosphere at Kerbin sea level. The higher the ISP value, the more efficient the engine. i.e. the LVL-909 is more efficient than the LVT-45. All-Star Gamer, thank you.
Okay, this one comes from Bob. Hey guys, it's been a while. I heard you.
Hey, Bob.
Hey, Bob. Hey guys, it's been a while. I heard you guys talking about engines and wanted to know about their efficiency. On the design screen and the information screen about each engine, it has its thrust and its ISP. Thrust is like its horsepower, and ISP, or specific impulse, is like its miles per gallon. So an engine like the atomic engine with only 60 thrust will not get into orbit, but the fact that it has an ISP of 800 means that while it has substantially less thrust, it is more than twice as efficient as the next most efficient engine.
On to our last letter. This one comes to us from Andrew C. Hello, Kerbalcast. I've been listening since episode 1, but didn't have the green guts to write in until now. I'd like to share a story of a mission gone awry and the steely nerves of one Jebediah Kerman. After listening to an old pre-.24 episode in which Biff outlines his plan for a science-gathering mission in which a pod sent on a beeline out of Kerbin's sphere of influence and performs an immediate U-turn. You're doing sound effects. I decided to give it a shot. I launched a simple rocket straight up and away from Kerbin. Upon transitioning into Kerbal's SOI, sphere of influence, I reaped the treasure trove of science and pointed my craft back towards home. I guess the KSP engineers had neglected to account for the added weight of all those juicy science points because the return burn left Jeb in a highly, and I mean highly, eccentric orbit around Kerbin.
Oh, crap.
With fumes in the tank. Now, I should add that I was playing with the Deadly Reentry mod. With a name like that, a little explanation is needed. I know from previous experience that without a slow, gentle reentry profile, that Jeb's craft would be vaporized. Jeb's orbit wasn't pretty.
Ugh.
With a periapsis just above 90 kilometers and an apoapsis well below the orbits of the Mun and Minmus, reentry wasn't possible. Feeling defeated and a little snacky, I consider... You're not going to do chewy sounds for the snacky?
No, he's feeling snacky. He doesn't have any snacks.
Well, what about the shelves that say snacks on them?
Oh, it's empty.
Yeah.
That's why he's feeling snacky.
You have to do the sound of the drawer opening, him getting out a snack, and then eating it.
Okay, hold on.
I'm glad I said what that was, because otherwise I would have no idea. Feeling defeated and a little snacky, I considered giving up and leaving Jeb to become just another satellite. Before calling it quits, I had a bold idea. I figured that with enough nudging, the vessel could dip into the upper limits of Kerbin's atmosphere. However, with such an extreme apoapsis, dipping too deep would be like slamming into a brick wall. I concluded that the safest way to get home was to perform a series of atmospheric skips, gradually lowering my apoapsis and overall eccentricity. With no fuel to make adjustments, only one option remained: get out and push. As the vessel reached apoapsis, Jeb, as if he had any say in the matter, turned the broadside of his pod prograde and emerged from the hatch. By planting himself on the prograde side and firing his RCS pack, the orbit slowly began to decay. I didn't realize you could do that. The beauty of this plan is that once the periapsis was in the sweet spot, each low pass over Kerbin lowered the apoapsis by a considerable amount. Jeb must have completed nearly 15 orbits before the safe re-entry parameters were met. On the 16th orbit, the re-entry profile had resolved itself, and Jeb, safely back in his pod, streaked across the night sky and splashed down only a few miles from KSC. Whenever I'm playing KSP and I think a mission is completely botched, I remember this story and remind myself that Kerbal Space Program isn't about getting everything right all the time. It's about making the best of the worst situations. With a little resourcefulness and a lot of monopropellant, anything is possible. Go boldly, Andrew C. All right.
Yeah, it's a good story.
That was a good story. Well, let's move on now. We have exhausted our supply of letters and news, and we will move on to this week's Modders Minute with DK.
This week we're talking about a mod that's only been out for about a month, and it's one of my favorites in a while. We're talking about the Atmospheric Trajectories mod. Sometimes it can be hard to land exactly where you want, and if you screw it up a bit with a space plane, it can add quite a bit of time to your mission. This mod has you covered. What this mod does is simple. In Orbital View, it gives you a trajectory that accounts for the atmosphere of the body you're orbiting. And more than that, it also displays where you're going to be landing, or crashing, as the case may be. And this accounts for both the atmosphere and the rotation of the body you're around. So if you're trying to precision land at your moon base, this is the tool for you. This mod also makes aero braking a breeze. The most efficient time to burn is at your periapsis, right in the middle of your aero brake. But if you've done this, then you know how easy it is to overdo it, and then have an unfortunate unplanned rapid disassembly. Atmospheric Trajectories shows you what your orbit is going to look like after you're through the atmosphere, so you can see how close you are to your desired orbit. And for people like me who enjoy their game heavily modded, it also works with the near and far atmospheric overhaul mods. This mod is still in beta, but I couldn't help share it with you guys here. It's just too good a mod to not talk about.
Okay, Modder's Minute with DK. Don't forget you can check him out on Twitch TV. Declarations is his channel, and also he's on KSP TV. That's every Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern.
That is actually a really useful sounding mod.
Yeah.
Okay, so you remember that Shade Challenge from forever ago where you had to land the little houses, and you would go launch the thing, but you were never sure where you're going to land.
Right.
Like, that could solve that problem.
Yeah.
It's like, you're going to land right here.
Right.
Like it or not, you're landing here. And so it accounts for atmosphere and stuff. So
Yeah. You know, I had another $1 million idea. Squad, get that checkbook out. Future tech.
What does that even mean?
What that means is take technology that is plausible and that is in the working stages now.
Yeah.
And extrapolate it in the game. Do a mod or do another gameplay mode or something where you could do like, you know, moon bases and Mars colonies and yeah. So Squad owes me what? Are we up to 6 million or 5 million? You guys owe me money.
Oh, wait.
Hey, you know what?
I got a $1 billion idea.
You've got $1 billion idea?
Yeah. I think they should use your ideas. Oh, who's rich now?
Burn.
Who's rich now?
Burn.
I'm rich.
You're rich.
I'm rich.
Okay,
So-
well, you mentioned Shay, so let's go on to the Shay Challenge.
It's time for the Shay Challenge. The time
Billionaire.
The time I've spent in the new update leads to my new challenge. The surprise in the update was destructible buildings. I want you to try to build a rover that has the ability to demolish the new building at the Space Center in one flight. Afterwards, enjoy your conquest with a dip in the new pool. Oh, and don't forget the snacks.
You know, I call that the Destructo Derby Challenge.
Yeah, you get to make like a giant monster truck.
Yeah.
Like-
I love the idea of a rover like taking out the, you know, like various buildings around the Kerbal Space Center. Okay, well, anyway, so that's your Shay Challenge for the week. Get destructive. Do a Destructo Derby. Well, let's move on. Let's go ahead and toss out some thanks because we're wrapping up episode 22. As always, we do want to thank our listeners and everyone who wrote in.
Our regular contributors, DK, Dark Mushroom, and Shay Byram.
For the Shay Challenge. Squad, all of your hard work. Good job on 0.25, guys.
It's great.
Yeah, and I'm going to do this one more time. 0.25, economic boom. All right, who else are we thanking?
The moderators for the subreddits, Kerbal Space Program and Kerbal Academy.
That's right. Look for a link to our podcast on their front pages.
All the music you've heard is by Professor Soap. You can find him at facebook.com/Professor Soap.
And while you're online, don't forget you can contact us, kerbalpodcast@gmail.com. Subscribe to us on Twitter. That's @Kerbalcast. And I promise we're going to try and do screenshots so you can see what some of our goofy-looking ships look like.
You see our atrocities.
Our atrocities.
So you can subscribe to us on iTunes, or you can download episodes directly from kerbalpodcast.libsyn.com.
And that wraps it up for our program. Stay tuned for After the Credits. We are going to talk about two things. Not one, not two, but 3 Soyuz missions. And Nos is going to tell us why
I am the law.
If they don't make another Judge Dredd sequel, the punishment is death. That is Kerbalcast Episode 22, Economic Boom or Economic Bust. I am your LMP, Lunar Module Pilot Biff Aldrin, our CMP, Command Module Pilot,
Nostromo.
We'll see you again next time. Happy Kerbaling!
Thanks for sticking around. It's time for After the Credits.
And we are glad that you did stick around. Time now for After the Credits, or as Nos likes to call it,
Kerbal After Dark.
We have some space history to pass along. Last week, we did Apollo 7 and Voskhod 1. And this week, we're going to talk about another Soviet space mission. And this is 3. This is the first time in history the 3 spaceships went into orbit in tandem. Soyuz 6, Soyuz 7, and Soyuz 8. And they all launched one day apart. October the 11th, 1969, Soyuz 6 launched. The following day, the 12th, Soyuz 7, and then the day after that, the 13th, Soyuz 8 launched. And what they were attempting to do was they wanted to rendezvous and dock Soyuz 7 and Soyuz 8. And Soyuz 6's job was to hover about 50 meters away and film it all. And if you think you're having problems with rendezvous and dock, imagine what it was like for these guys. On October the 14th, they attempted for the very first time to conduct orbital maneuvers. And guess what? The ships got within about 1 kilometer apart. And the automation software, automation systems, rendezvous systems failed.
Oh.
On all of the ships.
Oh, well.
All of them.
I would not want to be the guy that was in charge of that.
Yeah. It said that the ships were about 1 kilometer apart. And then, so they, on the ground, there was a big debate. Well, okay, should we attempt manual docking? Well, because this was the Soviet Union, they did not have the extensive range of ground-to-air transmission or ground-to-air radio network.
Yeah.
So there was very much a dead spot. There was a fairly limited window when the spacecraft in orbit could communicate with the ground. By the time they reached the decision on the ground to go ahead and try manual docking, the 2 ships were out of the radio zone. And at that point, they were approximately 3,000 meters apart. And mission rules say that the only way you could dock manually was the ships had to be about 1,500 meters apart. And they were out of range of ground tracking, so they decided, well, they're too far apart, and we can't do this. So day 2 rolls around, October the 15th, and they try again. They had made some orbital corrections overnight, and when they reacquired Soyuz 8 and Soyuz 7, they were supposed to be 1 kilometer apart. But in fact, it turns out they were 40 kilometers apart.
Ugh.
So 2 more orbits and about 4 hours and a lot of tweaking, and they managed to get them about 1,700 meters apart. And at this point, they try manual docking. But the pilots cannot get accurate range to target data, so again, the mission is scrubbed. Okay? Day 3, October 16th. Soyuz 6 lands. So now there's Soyuz 7 and Soyuz 8 in orbit. And they try 2 more times to dock. And both times fail because they are not able to accurately calculate their orbital maneuvers.
Yeah.
And so Soyuz 7 lands the next day. Soyuz 8 lands the day after that. One thing I will say that I find very interesting, in doing the space history segment of this show, I am learning more about the Soviet space program than I had ever known.
Huh. Yeah.
I think this is a holdover from the Cold War. I think that mentality, there was a mentality during the Cold War to downplay everything they did. Everything the Soviets did, there was an attempt to kind of downplay it.
Yeah.
And you heard some of that last week. Voskhod 1 was the first time that 3 people went into orbit.
Mm-hmm.
And you heard what they were saying. Well, yeah, but it was the same craft that they had used before, and they took everything out, and that was the only way they could get the guys in there. And, they kind of made it sound like, well, yeah, they did it, but they cheated.
Yeah.
Well, those 3 guys still took the risk.
Yeah.
And they still, there still were 3 people in orbit.
Yeah, and that ship still went into space. And
And
all of their efforts and all the things they did were legitimate.
Yeah, and if it had failed, those 3 guys would have been just as dead.
Yeah.
So you can't really take it away. And the other thing, I was not aware of this, but as I've been researching more, I did not realize how much the Soviet space agency or Soviet space, whatever you would call it, program, actually did. They attempted flybys of Mars. They did a flyby of Venus, landed on it. I believe first pictures from the surface of Venus was Soviet space program. They were trying to do a lot of things. And whereas the United States was very focused on getting to the moon, what happened was we got to the moon and then the public went, okay, that's, we're done with that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it stopped.
Yeah, because we kind of put like all of our eggs in one basket as far
we,
as
we
our
said
prestige.
getting to the moon, we're going to get to the moon, we're going to walk on the moon, we're going to bring him back safely. We did it, we're done. And, our space program has continued, but it's been a very small version of what it was.
Yeah.
The Soviets, on the other hand, continued as they were. I mean, they continued with the space station and they continued with long distance missions, and they continue with a lot of stuff. But anyway, a lot of accomplishments in the Soviet space program, and we'll talk about them as they come up, because I kind of do this on a week to week basis. Whatever happens a week ago, this week at some point in history, we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
But I will say, as far as the Soviet stuff goes, I am learning at the same time you are. I was not able to find any video footage. I was not able to find any audio of the Soyuz missions 6, 7, and 8, but I did manage to find kind of a rough outline of what all happened. So the next time you're trying to do rendezvous and dock, just imagine how difficult it was for the guys that were actually up there and did not have nice little computer displays showing them maneuver nodes and all kinds of fun stuff. So anyway, that's your weekly dose of space history. Now we're going to move on to something else.
Yeah, something else.
Something of great importance to NOS.
We didn't do it in the past couple of weeks because we had other things. We were talking about
space history.
Yeah, space history. We're always going to give that precedent. But actually, it was October 1st was Make a Dread sequel day. So
give some backstory.
So the movie Dread came out. It was
2012, I believe.
Yeah, 2012.
Carl Urban.
Carl Urban was the star, and it was also with Olivia Thirlby and Lena Headey. They did the movie Dread, and the Dread takes from a comic book universe.
Judge Dredd.
Of Judge Dredd. So the movie came out, and it did not just blow anything out of the water as far as the box office goes.
Yeah.
But soon after that, they noticed they had extremely high Blu-ray sales, and still consistently high Blu-ray sales. And there's actually social media campaigns to make a second one. Anytime Amazon has had some sort of fun little voting competition, I'm like, what's the best comic book character? They've gone on, and Dredd has won almost everything category that he's ever been put in.
Have you ever read any of the original Dredd comics?
I've read parts. I didn't follow it.
Some of the really early ones are so far away from what it eventually became.
Yeah.
But you can see little seeds here and there of what it would eventually grow into.
Yeah. The universe of Dredd it takes place in North America and what's left of the U.S. It's been ravaged by war, and so there's only really one city left.
Yeah, it's like a mega city.
Yeah, it's a mega city. It stretches from I think it was Boston to D.C.
Yeah.
It's a huge, massive area, and that's pretty much all the population of the world left.
And there's correct me if I'm wrong, there's a wall around it, and everything outside of that is irradiated wasteland?
Irradiated wasteland,
okay,
and pretty much everything, there are no, forests, or there's no anything. It's seriously just nothing but city for that entire area. The entire thing is a play on, how fast, American culture has ramped up with guns and, violence and stuff
remember
like that.
now, this was Judge Dredd appeared in the British sci-fi magazine 2000 AD.
Yeah, so it was
So this was a British comment
on this,
or a comic commenting on America.
Yeah, on American lifestyle with gun culture and all that. So the movie itself, it follows, Dredd, Judge Dredd. He is a judge from the Hall of Justice, so they're pretty much like the police force that covers Mega City 1, because Mega City 1 is completely filled with crime. their police force is massive, but they can only respond to around 6% of the crime calls they have. So there's gang violence everywhere, and it's pretty much what it's like if you get a whole bunch of people crowded into one area they can't leave. It's like.
And remember, these are super police guys. I mean, they don't just arrest.
Yeah,
I mean, these are judge, jury, executioner.
Yeah, so on the spot, they can make your judge, like they can judge you for whatever your crimes are, and they can execute you on the spot. And it's funny whenever they refer to things, there's like the meat wagon, and so dead bodies are taken for recyc.
Right.
And they're pretty much made into food and stuff like that. So it's like almost like the Matrix, sort of, where the dead are made into things to feed the living.
Wait a minute, Soylent Green is made out of people,
and it's delicious.
Uh-huh.
It follows him and his recruit, Olivia Thirlby, playing Judge Anderson, taking her on basically a day on the job. Seeing
bad boys,
seeing if she can pass.
What you gonna do?
Okay, so they end up in. I'm not going to just do an entire plot summary, but they end up in one of the habitation apartment areas, which are these massive 200-story, buildings.
Yeah. Think of like a high-rise apartment building with super secure outer doors and things.
So they end up getting locked up in there by a gang boss, Lena Headley, Mama, and the Mama clan, and they pretty much have to fight their way out and survive. So you've seen the movie.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of it?
I thought it was a very good movie. I was very impressed with the fact that they did a great deal of storytelling in a very small space. To confine the action in such a limited environment, they really did a good job of playing with that, because you really did get the sense the entire movie that it was two people against almost an entire building that wanted them dead.
Yeah.
And they played a lot with the claustrophobia, and they constantly changed things up. Right when you kind of settled into one groove, they would introduce something else. Here's corrupt judges. Okay, here's machine guns. Here's, they just kept adding things, and they just kept changing the mixture. And I think it was very well done. I can see why some people had some trouble with it, because there's a level of grittiness that is very Road Warrior. Do you remember the old Mad Max?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The difference is the Mad Max, it was like they were scavenging what was left of the old world and making it work. And that's how they were living. They were picking the bones of the old carcass, the carcass of the old world. Judge Dredd, on the other hand, is still very much the same thing, but it's also very futuristic. And I think that some people might have been thrown by that, in that, hey, it's an apocalyptic wasteland, but it's also this very futuristic wasteland. And I think that trying to condense that into a trailer might have thrown some people.
Yeah.
They might have looked at it and just gone, I have no idea what this is.
Uh-huh.
But it's one of those movies that, if you sit, because I looked on IMDb, and a lot of the posts there literally say things like, this movie was surprisingly good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's people who don't know what to make of it.
Well,
but then they watch it and they go, oh, it makes perfect sense.
Not to mention its predecessor, which was a Sylvester Stallone Dredd movie.
Yes.
Which,
no, it never existed.
We're gonna go with that.
No, it never existed.
So
Judge Dredd with Stallone, Temple of Doom, and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, none of them were ever made. Those movies do not exist.
So, first off, if you ever
say otherwise,
I don't know if I want to, it's a movie. I don't know if I want to sit and watch it. It's 90 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That's its runtime.
It is very short.
Very short
for a movie.
But the entire time, there's not a moment where you're like, oh well, I could go do something else while it's still in the background. It's like the entire time you are on that thrill ride. They didn't waste any time.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, so I'm going to go into concepts now. Concepts on the movie.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's kind of like what I did with Prometheus, like meanings and whatever. So I watched this for the first time, and I walked out of it. I was like, oh, it's amazing, And then a lot of my friends were like, it's okay, it's just an action movie. I was like, no, you need to notice these couple things. So one of the cool things you'll notice, there's a drug in the movie called slow-mo. And what it does is it makes your brain think time is passing at 1%, 1% the speed. Well, visually in the movie, they make everything real like glittery and well, the movie's a very colorful movie. Yeah. So they do that and it just makes everything just shine and have this really cool sheen to it.
Yeah,
well,
it is the most high production, low budget. I mean, it looks like the most high production, low budget movie ever.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a low budget movie, but it looks like it.
So you follow
that
all
was a
these
compliment,
people,
by the way, in case that was misinterpreted.
One of the first times you really see it is you see these, whenever I first noticed it, you see these two kids and they're going down the hallway and they go to this, this room and, they have the drugs there. And so they buy the drugs and they sit there and they're both like smiling and laughing. They're about to do slow-mo,
right.
And they do it and they're like, whoa, and then boom, in pops this like giant of a man with this helmet on all black. You can't see his face, and time's moving at 1%, and bullets are flying, and people are just getting shot. If you notice, a lot of the violence in that scene and in a lot of scenes is done to the face. Mm-hmm. People get shot in the face. People's face, like their face will burst open, whenever they land on the ground or whatever. And what do they have? The Dread doesn't have a face.
Yeah.
So the entire time you'll see like these scenes that look kind of unnecessary. You're like, why am I learning about, what the background story of this guy who's going to get shot in like 10 seconds? Why am I seeing him hang out with his friends? Or why am I seeing this guy and his family and stuff? Like, why does that matter? Because you're looking at a bunch of people that are in a situation where they're in this giant city and they can't leave it. And crime is awful. Unemployment rate in that area was like 96%, and, so they have like a humanity to them. They're not in great situations, and some of them aren't being the greatest people, but they have a humanity to them. And then comes in this faceless force of nature that goes under the guise of law.
Yeah, I should mention at this point, if you haven't seen the movie or if you haven't even seen a picture of it, Judge Dredd is wearing a helmet that literally covers his entire head, except for a very small area around his mouth. You can see his chin and you can see his mouth. You cannot see his nose usually.
Which carries this like permanent scowl.
Yeah. And he never takes the helmet off.
No, never.
And that is true to the comic book, which, they didn't, I was reading about this, they didn't intend that, but after a while, after drawing him with his helmet all the time, it became a rule. They kind of said, you know what, let's just keep the helmet on.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that Judge Dredd fans hated about the 95 Stallone thing was, Stallone, it was like, I'm not messing up my hair, I'm taking off the helmet.
Yeah.
And they were like, no.
Yeah. It's like you're not supposed to know who he is.
Right.
It's like, because really,
Adrian, look at this helmet.
He's basically turned himself into a concept. He is
right.
He is judgment. He is, like absolute justice, zero mercy. And so he just runs in, he busts into these doors and he's shooting these people that you know more about them than you know about him. And so you have this like faceless protagonist that is doing the right-ish thing, but then you have like
in the most brutal way possible.
In the most brutal way possible.
Yeah.
And then you have these, quote unquote bad guys, and like they don't seem so bad now. Yeah. But they're still doing bad things, and so it's awesome that Dredd is, like dispensing justice, but at the same time you're like, they're just people, know? Yeah. And he really seems the least human out of anything there. Mm-hmm. So that was the face thing. Now talking about the slow-mo and talking about color.
Right.
I noticed in the movie there were 3 colors that really stood out. And the thing I noticed that made me notice that was there's one character who's like a key witness, and he's being escorted around by both of the judges, by Anderson and Dredd.
Yeah, he's the whole reason that they lock down the building and try and kill him, because they do not want him. They do not want the judges to get this guy out of the building and into interrogation.
Yeah, he's wearing a yellow shirt. And then there's also this hacker character, and he's wearing a yellow shirt. Now, yellow is one of the least worn colors by people. Like, surveyed, it is actually most people that is their least favorite color to wear, or their least favorite color, period. And so I thought it really odd that 2 key characters like bright yellow shirts. And so it just kind of stood out to me. I was like, oh, that's just not something that's commonly chosen. And then as I'm watching
Can I call this the color commentary?
Yeah, it's a color commentary.
So as I'm watching it, I'm noticing yellow, green, and red show up a lot. People are either wearing almost exclusively that color or just, a combination of those colors. And so if you watch the movie, you'll notice that the characters that are wearing green, there's like a medical, a guy who runs a medical center wearing green, and he thinks he's completely safe. And he only does actions that will keep him safe. Then you notice
Okay, before you go any further.
Yeah.
Are you about to make a traffic sign, an automatic traffic thing?
Well, let's call it threat level.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay.
So you notice the characters that are wearing yellow, they all have something that is keeping them alive. So you have Anderson's character has psychic ability, and she has bright yellow hair. The key witness has his importance as a witness that is keeping either side from killing him. He's wearing the yellow shirt. The hacker guy has his ability to use computers and hacking, and that keeps anyone from killing him. They all have something that is used as leverage for their survival. Like they have something that is going to get them out of situations. Then you have red. The only color besides, just the gold of his badge and his pauldrons as the big red X on Dredd's face, on Dredd's helmet. And you also have all the reds that are surrounded by Mama all the time. These are people that they're out to keep themselves safe, and they're the main focuses of danger to other people. Because the people in yellow would rather, they do what they have to, but they would rather stay out of trouble. The greens will do anything to avoid trouble, and the ones that are red cause trouble. You with me so far?
I'm with you.
Okay, so I'm
still thinking about traffic lights.
Yeah. I thought, okay, maybe I'm a little nuts. Maybe this is a little too much. So there comes a scene where one character has another character dead to rights, pretty much. They're about to execute that character. I'm gonna keep it anonymous so you don't know who's who. Watch what colored graffiti is facing them. The one that's about to execute them is facing a certain color graffiti, and the other one's facing another color graffiti, and one of them makes it out of it alive. The one facing the red graffiti doesn't make it. The one facing the yellow graffiti does.
I feel like such a moron because, I watched the same movie you did, and I'm watching this stuff going, ooh, cool. Like,
yeah,
ooh,
no, I explained it to people, and
boom,
they're like, okay, yeah, whatever. And, I was like,
and you're sitting there looking at colors.
Yeah, I was like, just watch it and just keep it. And I don't think this was the purpose of the movie. I just think it's either an extremely interesting coincidence or something that was intentional, and it just hasn't gotten much light of day.
Well, directors typically will use staging like that, and they'll also use positioning of characters to, in addition to telling the story, they visually tell the story.
Yeah.
You see this a lot with David Fincher, how he moves his characters around within scenes, how he changes their focus with the camera. And what you're saying, whether it was intentional or not, there are unifying themes that visually tell the story. That goes beyond the acting and beyond the script and everything else. It's you can look at it and pick it up almost subconsciously.
Yeah.
So
and you'll notice that Mama's eyes green, but she surrounds herself, like almost all the lights in the areas that she's in and stuff are always exclusively red, because she herself does not pose much threat to Dredd, and she keeps herself safe, but she surrounds herself with things that are threats to Dredd.
Now, this movie, the budget on it was about $50 million. Box office, it did about $6 million North America.
Yeah.
I don't know what it did overseas, but I do know that it has since, because of the home video market, it has since more than recovered its original budget.
And they said originally they said if they broke even, then they would start work on a Dredd 2.
I'm curious, because Dredd 1, for lack of a better expression, takes place in a very confined space. What would you like to see for Dredd 2?
Okay, so first off, my favorite part about Dredd 1, just in sci-fi, you really run into the whole world's at stake. Right. The whole world's at stake. Everyone's going to die or get a disease or robots are going to take over. We have a hard time, you can have the Taken movies where your daughter's kidnapped. Okay, well, that takes place in like current day real life. And you're like, oh, okay, I can relate to that. That's a small scale thing, though. That's not going to end the world, her getting kidnapped. It'll end your personal world, but that's it. Sci-fi, they always have to make the whole world at stake because we can understand that and relate to it. We can't relate to,
It's like, oh, this city will be destroyed. And it's like, well, okay, well, maybe. I don't really know much about that city. The coolest part about this, about Dredd, it's one day on the job. And they reiterate that at the beginning and end of the movie. Just another day in Mega City 1.
So is that what you want for Dredd 2? Just another day?
Really, yeah.
Okay.
Like they could really make it to... They couldn't make it into a TV show because of how brutal it is. But it really could be like Cops, except set in the Dredd universe. So, they could have another thing like that, or they can do an origin story. At the end of the movie, her evaluation is over. And how does the evaluation end?
Well, technically, since she lost her gun, that was supposed to be an automatic fail.
Uh-huh.
But Dredd she passed.
Why did she pass?
Because she's blonde and pretty.
No, because it's if you lose your primary weapon. What's her primary weapon?
She's blonde and pretty.
She's got psychic powers is her primary weapon. Because if you look, that gets her out of trouble more often than her gun ever did. Because Dredd, it's like the gun, like the gun is his primary weapon. That is how he dispenses justice. That's not it for her. It's her psychic powers. So she never lost her primary weapon.
I should point out that is the Dredd voice. Dredd basically does Batman the entire movie.
Yeah, it's like real. Yeah, it's gotta like
losing your gun is an absolute fail.
Yeah, and you look the amount of control and anger that he has. He will only say sentences that are worth saying. Yeah. Like there's no small talk with him. But yeah, so she passes. So I think it could be them working a case, or they could bring in the weirder parts of Dredd, like Would
you like to see him expand it out?
Yeah,
where it's not like one building.
Oh no, I wouldn't want to see them do peach trees again, like the Peachtree building or anything. I wouldn't want to see a repeat of the first one, but they could bring in.
They could do the building next door, the apple tree building.
Yeah, there's like Judge Death and those judges. Another one they did is there's a short that you can find online called Judge Minty. And it's actually a Dredd story. And there's actually graffiti in part of the movie that says like, Minty is the law or whatever. Right. And it's the story of that judge. And it's him actually going out to the wasteland. Because whenever you quit, you can go, they give you a book of law and a gun. And you march out into the wilderness to dispense law to, because there's actually people out there in the wasteland. And you're out there and you dispense justice to the wasteland. That was one thing. In preparation for this, I went back and read some of the original comics, and we talk about the faceless justice that Judge Dredd is. In the comics, everybody knows who Dredd is. Everybody's like, there's Judge Dredd, he'll fix them. It's almost like he's a celebrity. Whereas in this one, he's just faceless. Yeah. The only people who seem to know him are the other judges. Yeah. So. Yeah, I just really like that it's kind of another day on the job kind of thing. Yeah. So you want a Dredd 2? I want a Dredd 2, and so should everyone. Everyone should want a Dredd. Everyone should want. Well, go watch Dredd. It is it's 90 minutes well spent. Yeah. It was on Netflix for a while. I don't know. It still is. It still is. Yeah. Yeah. So go watch it now. Go watch it this second. Yeah. But still listen to after the credits. Yeah, after the credits. Well, we're going to wrap up after the credits. As you can tell, this is very unstructured, and we just kind of go until we run out of steam. Last week, I left you with a song, Garbage Day, that was in honor of the board game that NOS has coming out soon, Trash Day. Yeah. And we actually got letters. Right now, the working title is Garbage Day for the game. Oh, is it Garbage Day? Yeah. I thought it was Trash Day. No. Oh, that's the Weird Al song. Yeah. Okay, I got it mixed up. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, so it is. Okay. So far, I mean, it's subject to change if they decide they have a better title or anything. So. Mr. Sanitation. Yeah. That's the title. But anyway, so we left you with Garbage Day, and we actually got a letter from somebody who said that we got that stuck in their head for the rest of the week. So maybe this one will get it out. Earlier in the program, one of our letter writers mentioned a band called Granddaddy and said that there was a song that was very Kerbal related. And the name of the song is He's Simple, He's Dumb, He's the Pilot. It is a 9-minute song. You're not going to hear all 9 minutes of it. I did a very short edit of it. But that's what we're going to leave you with. That's after the credits. Say goodbye. 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 We'll see you again next time. And here's Granddaddy.
How's it going, 2000 man? Welcome back to solid ground, my friend. I heard all your controls were jammed. It's just nice to have you back again. But I guess they still don't understand. And they can never understand. And they said go find 2,000 men. They said tell him you got no plans. But instead I'm here to tell you, friend. I believe they want you to give in. Are you giving in 2,000 men? Don't give in 2,000 men.